Hello, everyone. This is Keith Cirelli again for part two of how they manipulate your mind. And I did a little thinking about this, and I think I'm going to take a different approach than I initially had intended with what I'm going to present in part two. I think it's probably more important to understand what they're doing to you and understanding their strategies. Once you see the menagerie of psychological manipulation tactics, emotional manipulation tactics, and the way they do things in the most underhanded ways, all of this under the pretenses of you not knowing it. Therefore, they're working right in front of your face to get you to do or think what they want because they know that the tactics and strategies that they're using right in front of your face, you don't even recognize and see while they're manipulating or influencing your mind. Just like the book Edward Bernays put out, Propaganda. Your tastes are formed, this, that, and the other, by men you've never seen, yada, yada, yada. That whole narrative that he gives you there of how that works is true. And they use techniques like this through all of the various mechanisms of influence of the human mind, specifically television, mass media, mainstream media, Hollywood, just all of it. This is a type of, or some of, the tools in their arsenal to affect you mentally or emotionally. So, what I think I'm going to do is show you first what they're doing. It's kind of like watching. Let's say you're watching some crazy warrior dude that's doing something with like weapons and shit in the ring, and he's just doing it as a what do you call it when you're on display like that? Shit. Oh, there's a word for it. It escapes me. Putting on a performance. You get to see what he can do with his weapons. You get to see what his weapons do. When a samurai guy has his really sharp swords, soju, how quickly they can cut through one of those bamboo rolls. Well, imagine that being your arm or your neck. It shows you what they can do with the weapon. Now, you know when you're standing in front of that samurai dude and he has one of those swords drawn on you, so to speak. Now you understand you have a formidable opponent because you understand what he's capable of doing with the weapons that he's bringing to bear against you. You might want to study that first to recognize what you're up against, then start studying how to fight against it. And my philosophy here, my approach, if you will, philosophy, loosely used term, is let's show you the weapons first. Let's show you what they can do to you. And then once you understand what they can do to you and what they're willfully doing to you, then we're going to show you, then we'll go from a perspective of now we're going to teach you how to defend yourself against these types of weapons and these types of attack by way of explaining to you how their weapons affect you here, here, and here. Like with the rolled up bamboo, when I slice through and you see that it cuts, you can kind of deduce that, yeah, if that was my arm, that would be pretty bad for me. These aren't quite so obvious where you already can make the correlation to some of this stuff because they're mental, emotional, psychological processes. And that's the most subtle type and subtle form of manipulation. It really, really, really is. I'm telling you, you'd really rather face an awesome opponent face to face than somebody that knows how to psychologically coitus your mind in a myriad of different ways, whether it's getting you to believe a thing, feel a certain way, be interested in a certain thing, or whatever other thing. So much of what they're doing, people don't even realize. Remember the model that Edward Bernays gives us in Propaganda. Actually, I'm going to pause this and I'm going to pull it up. So here it is. Let's look down here real quick. Intelligent manipulation, habits, opinions. Look at this, opinions. So, whoops, what's that? Look at that. Anyway, and I just now seeing that he actually used that word. We are governed. Look at this. Our minds molded. All of this that molds the mind is a lot of. Hold on. I got to jump back and forth, and I don't have all the most fancy equipment. But a lot of this is the stuff that where's it at? Come on. Oh, hold on. I'm jumping back and forth here. Sorry. That this is doing, so we are governed, our minds molded by all this shit: narrative framing, nudging, priming, repetition, scarcity, urgency, fear, selective exposure, molding your mind. Therefore, they're governing you, because as they mold your mind, it forms beliefs that they tug on the strings of, and then they can tug on the emotional strings as well. But look at this. Our tastes formed are our excuse me, our ideas suggested largely by men we have never heard of. Well, those men that we have never heard of, they work for these institutions here. I got to populate this with more information. And then they influence all of this, all of this stuff. They use all of this stuff to, and then use these as a tactics and the strategies by using those implements, if you will. That's kind of how this works. So I'm going to show you the weapons that they use. And this is by no means complete, but it's enough. It's enough. It'll get you going. When you understand all of this at the level that the information that I have here available to you should allow you to, I can guarantee you will be more armed at an awareness level and an intellectual / knowledge awareness level to then be able to see when they do certain things and then recognize how it may have an effect on thoughts, opinions, beliefs, or your perceptions. That's kind of a big thing, because this is an assault on human cognition. This is an assault on human consciousness and awareness, especially when they're in control of the mechanisms of influence of our mind. And you get things like repetition, like George Bush says, Jr., repeat, repeat, repeat. Sometimes you just got to catapult the propaganda and keep repeating this whole thing. So with that said, I'm trying to explain to you why you should be motivated to want to understand this, unless you're at a level of consciousness where when someone points this out and explains this to you, even if you're 20 years old, if you don't recognize what's being said to you in the reality that you live in, and realize that everybody that controls this world, from the context of the system, your average Joe isn't talking about that. I'm talking about the system, all the stuff that you can see is going on out there. This is how they're doing it to you. This is the tactics and strategies that they're up to, and including your government. Your government. I mean, they're the ones. They're a big purveyor of the propaganda machine, politics. And what I forget. There's so much to go into. There's so much to go into to explain to people. But when you combine this and then you look at how they're doing it and the aspects of these non-physical components of you that they're going after, using largely in the media, in all of the digital electronic forms of information we take in from radio, TV, Hollywood, Netflix, all that crap, just everything. So if that doesn't grab your awareness, then it's just going to take a little bit more time of the world of lunacy to penetrate your current ability to see. But what I'm going to do is read these at a high level, and I'll explain what I'm saying. Many of you may have noticed by this point there are links in the descriptions of the video that will take you to the website where you can actually dive through this at your leisure. Let me show you. So you'll see here I have my browser up, and yeah, something just happened. Oh, I hit the pause button on my software and it did something to my browser. But anyway, this is yeah, okay. Hold on. Why is this doing this? There we go. So this is the link. You'll find the link. It may not be app, it might be a short link. But anyway, if you want to dive through some of this stuff, you can click on the link and it'll bring it up. Sometimes the text can be slow to load. It's a pain in the neck, but it is what it is. It's free for you to have access to, so to speak. And that's about the only problem I've ever seen with it. So if you click on something and the text doesn't change, come on, then, you know, it's like you got to wait 10, 15 seconds. It should catch up, or click on another one and come back to it. But generally speaking, they'll all load. And the reason I show you that is, for instance, with anchoring, you know, I'm going to explain this stuff to you and even a little bit of this. But when you look at all of the explanations of the various places and spaces in which they can do that, how they do it, examples of how they do it, this is where anybody that desires to learn and understand the ways in which they're actually being manipulated, I'm providing you the ability to have access for nothing, to do a little bit more of your own deep diving and expand further on what I'm showing you. Because in the sake of time, because if I was to read all of these, it would literally be 10 videos, because some of these, let me get rid of this. Some of these, I mean, let's look at the words here. Hang on a second. Anchoring, bear with me. Anchoring, to fully explain it, we got almost 3,000 words. It takes a lot of time. And since I'm not getting paid for it, there's no incentive for me to read the whole thing. And it would take a lot of time to read that much. And there's a lot of words to explain scenarios and examples out in the world, whether it's on TV, whether it's in politics, whether it's at school, whether it's a human being that's doing it to you, whether it's this, that, or the other, in an advertisement, whatever. There's all these examples of how it's done, little strategies, and all of this designed to make your mind more aware of the insidious nature to subtly influence and manipulate your mind. It's why you must guard your mind. And the way to guard your mind is through knowledge. Because when you have knowledge, then you know you can't be deceived as easily. And if they're going to deceive you, they have to work real hard at it. And it's entirely likely, with the sufficient knowledge, you'll be an awful lot more likely, or you'll be more apt to see the red flags and where things just don't make a lot of sense. Anyway, so, okay. So I'm going to hold off on explaining this stuff. And I think I'm going to go with the techniques to manipulate the mind thought, or human thought perception, without your knowledge, without your awareness. And then I'll go into influencing the cognitive elements and cognition and stuff. And I think I'm going to save thoughts and opinions and stuff for last, keeping in mind that if you want to go and look at this yourself, you can. Okay, so we will start off with anchoring, and I will just progress down the left side and down the right side. I will read for you guys, for instance, the first top half, and then all the examples and things of that nature. I'm going to allow you to take the time to go and explore that for yourself And if you're unwilling to do that, I guess existence says that you're unworthy to know. And if you don't know, then you won't recognize if you don't put in the time. That's just kind of something that you have to reconcile, like within yourself. And part of you learning has to be somewhat of an interactive experience where you're putting in the time beyond just sitting and listening to a video. If I was making tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars to, you know, do whatever, sure, I'd have all kinds of motivation. I'll read you every damn word. I'll read it to you with a little bit of sugar on it, and whatever you want. But since I'm doing this because I'm an Aquarius and the world and humans kind of need to know this stuff, this is kind of where I'm like, you kind of have to put in some of your own effort. And if you're unwilling to, then I guess you're unwilling to. I'm not your judge. Yeah, that's just the way that goes. Reality will judge you, if you will. So with all of these, it's going to be pretty much like that. So fear mongering, I'll read you the first part of it, maybe, and then leave you to you can come and look at this stuff yourself and get a sense of it. You start putting it all together. You start getting a scale in your mind, understanding the scale of how they use fear mongering, the scale of how they're doing what they're doing. And all of a sudden things start making a lot more sense. So I guess that's it. I think I beat that dead horse. So anchoring is a cognitive bias in which people rely too heavily on an initial piece of information, the anchor, when making decisions, even if that information is irrelevant or arbitrary. This bias can be exploited in many ways, particularly in the context of negotiation, marketing, and even legal or financial decision making. So marketers, salesmen, and things of that nature, this speaks directly to that. And marketing, you're going to get in a myriad of different ways. Negotiation as well, because if I can anchor you to a certain feeling or emotion or thought in the negotiation process, I can go higher or get you to go lower or whatever it's going to be. It's all a matter of understanding these strategies. So this bias, this bias can be exploited in many ways, particularly in the context of negotiation, marketing, and this goes even further, and even legal and financial decision making. This bias affects how we evaluate subsequent information and can distort our judgment, often leading to poor decision making and skewed perceptions, because you're making you're perceiving and making decisions based off of the anchor rather than, and not the truth. The anchor acts as the reference point, and all further information is judged relevant to it, regardless of its actual merit. In the context of advertising, negotiations, pricing, and consumer behavior, anchoring is used to manipulate choices by presenting a particular number, price, piece of information first, making it the first point for all future decisions. The initial anchor has a disproportionate impact on how people perceive the value of a product, a service, or an offer. Anchoring is a powerful psychological tool that influences how people perceive value, make decisions, and interpret information. By strategically introducing a reference point, the anchor, marketers, retailers, negotiators, all of those people that have an interest in subtly influencing your mind and what you think, believe, perceive, or feel, they can manipulate the perceptions of worth and make subsequent choices appear more attractive or reasonable. So I'll read that again. By strategically introducing a reference point, the anchor, marketers, retailers, negotiators, and others can manipulate perceptions of worth. They can give you a perception that it's worth more, and make subsequent choices appear more attractive or reasonable. And it's strategy. It's absolute strategy. I guess one could argue that it's like the mental game of chess that certain people play. And I guess like in the game of chess, if I know more about chess and I've studied strategy better and I play against you, the odds of me beating you are fairly strong. So understanding anchoring can help consumers be more aware of how their judgments are influenced, enabling them to make more informed choices. Anchoring is most certainly used in manipulative ways by governments, media, etc., to influence people's judgments, often without their conscious awareness. Now, you've got to go back to one thing and consider something. These people believe they have the fucking right because you don't know and because they have the ability. Plus, they know how to do this. They understand the condition that you're in and that they can do this to you and that you probably won't recognize it and protect yourself from their efforts to subtly manipulate what you think, believe, perceive, or feel. Seriously, these are the people, these types of people, and those in the systems that they put this stuff through to get into our heads. These are the ones that are taking the liberties because they can. What are you going to do about it, human? How are you going to stop me? What are you going to do? Oh, the only thing that you can do, human, is educate yourself. So the intent of anchoring is to influence and manipulate. The nefarious use of anchoring tends to revolve around exploiting vulnerabilities, extracting more value from you, maximizing somebody else's control over you, or normalizing behaviors. Think about it. And the left, they're masters at this shit. You got to be really careful with the left, as ridiculously cringeworthy and toxic as they are. The ones pulling the strings over there, they're not dumb. They're not dumb. They might be many other things, but dumb is not one of them. So they understand how to do this stuff. They understand how to anchor, how to do that. They understand that most humans don't recognize what that is, let alone that it's being done to them. So anyway, there's a myriad of examples of ways in which the various types of people that would have an inclination to do this to you. And if you want to know about it, I'm going to suggest that you go and do your own reading. So, bandwagon effect. The bandwagon effect occurs when people adopt a particular behavior or belief because they perceive it to be popular or because others are doing it. The bandwagon effect refers to the psychological phenomenon in which people tend to align their beliefs, attitudes, or behaviors with those of the majority or the perceived majority simply because others are doing so. It is rooted in the desire to conform, which is strange. That's the sheepish mindset. And to feel included and validated within a group. I'm going to read that again. It is rooted in the desire to conform and to feel included and validated within a group. The term bandwagon comes from the idea of joining a parade or movement that is gaining popularity, much like people hopping onto a moving wagon because it's already popular, fun, and fashionable. This is clearly what happened with the COVID hoax, the get your shots. That was all bandwagon mindset of the already indoctrinated people who were being pulled and led by the strings that are attached to their beliefs. Thusly, they went bandwagon, and then you see these campaigns of media where they're calling the unvaxxed immoral people and that we should be shunned and all kinds of other stuff. Those are the people that were pushing the bandwagon effect and then casting shit on those of us that were not stupid enough to buy their stupid psychological tricks and recognize the level of lies, deception, trickery, etc., etc., etc. You can see bandwagon plain as day once you understand. It's basically going with the crowd. It's doing it because everybody else is doing it. It's doing it because you think it's the right thing to do because everybody else is doing it, which is the wrong reason to think it's the right thing to do. Bandwagon gets a lot of people who are in and we all come from this place. I've been there. Where we're in that more sheepish consciousness level where we're not thinking for ourselves, where we are more easily led because we don't know. See, that's another thing about people is when you don't know, you follow the herd, you follow the group. the group could be bandwagon because the group is going to do what people are going to do, what the rest of the group's doing, kind of thing. Basically going along with the crowd. So this effect is a powerful form of social influence by the social engineers and is commonly used in advertising, politics, social media, public opinion, politics, propaganda, to persuade the people to adopt a particular stance or action because everyone else is doing it. The bandwagon effect plays on our inherent desires to be part of the crowd, avoid being left out, and to adopt behaviors that are perceived as socially acceptable or mainstream. This is a complete play on, or you could even call it a hack on an aspect that they're aware of the human psychology that has a desire to be part of the crowd because we're tribal-based humans. We're designed for connection. We're designed for pair bonding. We're designed to be quote unquote part of a community. You could call it a crowd. In today's world, with everybody being so uneducated, the crowd is a bad thing to be in because they make poor choices because they're easily led by things like bandwagon effect. Bandwagon effect is where the Pied Piper basically is saying something and people are being led by those words. So, and then there's plenty of examples of how bandwagon effect is used on people. And again, that is available for you to look at and for you to explore on the web. You can look at it and learn all of this stuff and assimilate it into your mind so that you understand. But when you just look at it at a high level, joining the winning side, the underdog becomes popular. Everybody's buying this product. Social proof. We get into that one here soon. There's just all kinds of trivial, superficial, surface level reasons that they're able to grab the attention and influence the perception of the lesser aware. When we are lesser aware, when we're ignorant, which is by definition lack of knowledge, when we're naive, and I'll tell you, if there's one thing that I've suffered through in life and suffered the consequences of it, is my own naivety. And I have countless examples of where I have suffered harsh consequences in life because of naivety. So that's kind of a big thing. It's as important to educate, or it's as detrimental to us as ignorance. It really is. So anyway, on to the next one. So bandwagon, celebrity endorsement and authority. So we're going to get the pretty people to fucking endorse what we want, or authoritarian type people. You get the chief of police to back a security product, or whatever version of that they can create, where some body that is in some perceived authority, and some people actually look up to these celebrities like authority figures and believe what they say because they're the pretty popular people who are like quote unquote rich and stuff, and look, they're on TV, so they must be important. When you realize that that's a card that they play, that's why they put these people in front of us. You can see it with politics. You could see it with the fucking COVID agenda and the shots and just all of the bullshit. Look at what these people revealed themselves to be. Think about it. Look at what these people have revealed themselves to be. So, celebrity endorsement and authority are powerful psychological tools that leverage the influence of public figures to shape attitudes, beliefs, and consumer behaviors. This is the whole Edward Bernays thing. Your tastes are formed and your desires and all that other stuff. And they're generally referring to consumer behaviors, but it goes deeper. But that's, I think, what he was referring to there. Whether through the use of celebrities or experts, this technique plays on trust. Now, you got to wonder where that trust is based in, and the fact that it's ill-placed trust And that they can play on that ill-placed trust that these celebrities can be trusted. Whoa, it's crazy that they know that they can create this idea of trustedness in the minds of people because these celebrities play particular roles, or the authoritarians that they put in front of you play particular roles. So it builds this model in your head, this idea, nothing more really than an idea, that there is a trust there or some familiarity, hence social proof. And the intent and the inherent belief that those with authority or status are more knowledgeable or reliable. Now, just think back on the corona hoax and the shit that they were pushing, whether through the use of celebrities or experts. This technique plays on trust, familiarity, social proof, and the inherent belief that those with authority or status are more knowledgeable or reliable. Now, you could reasonably argue that in certain positions, yeah, you will have specific knowledge that the rest of us don't. However, look at the position that we're in when we have to depend on these people who, when you start looking at the psychological profiles of largely the people who even gravitate towards positions of power. And this is the people we have to put trust in because of a perceived authority. It gets deep, people. It really gets deep. Okay. Celebrity endorsements and authority refer to the strategy of using well-known public figures, experts, and authoritative figures to promote products, ideas, or causes. The basic principle behind this technique is that consumers or followers are more likely to trust, buy, or support something if it's endorsed by someone they admire, trust, or perceive as an authority in a particular field. I mean, just think about that. So, and because they're getting a paycheck for it, the celebrity or the authority figure, authority person, they're getting a paycheck for it, even if the product sucks. Now, some of them might care if the product sucks, but some of them don't. I've seen some of these people endorsing the most ridiculous shit, and it's like, really? Well, if you're going to sell out for a fucking check, this is what they do. People will literally sell their fucking morals, their quote-unquote soul, for some fucking dollars, man. It's just crazy, so that they can buy a big house or have a fancy fucking car or something. And at this level that these people play at, this is what we're talking about. We're not talking about doing shit just to pay the fucking bills, so to speak. We're talking excessiveness and shit like that. But anyway, I digress. Celebrities, by virtue of their fame, influence, and the public's emotional connection to them, have a unique ability to persuade others. Similarly, supposed authority figures, such as doctors, scientists, professors, or leaders, I should have put that in quotes as well, can lend their credibility to a product or idea. Well, what if they're corrupt? What if they're corrupt and on the take? What if they're being influenced? What if an awful lot of things? See, when they do this, you don't think for yourself. You don't research. You don't do any due diligence. All of us. It's not you, all of us. So, or leaders can lend their credibility to a product or idea, making it appear more legitimate or trustworthy. This approach leverages social proof, credibility, and influence to drive decisions. When celebrities or authority figures endorse a product or a message, they bring with them not just their image, but also their social status, perceived expertise, and the implicit trust that followers place in them. Over time, these endorsements can significantly impact public perceptions and behaviors, sometimes regardless of the actual quality or merit of the product or idea. Many people tend to trust and follow figures of authority or those they admire. Hollywood and TV personalities, athletes, and other celebrities are frequently used to lend credibility and influence over consumers. And then you can go here and look and see all kinds of examples in various areas or genres of human life. Public service campaigns, consumer behavior, public trust, politics, advocacy, these, I guess, activists or something is what I'd call them. So advocacy and activists and politics and all these grassroots efforts, they have vested interest in getting people to follow what they're saying or buy into their narrative for sometimes not bad reasons. Many times, when you think about, as an example, sidestepping just a little bit, When you think about how much money was put into the NGOs, if you've seen the schematic of the like 40 to 50,000 organizations, I think across the globe and the interconnectedness, it showed this massive monstrosity. All of it, I think, controlled by the left. And when you look at the left, what it represents and what it stands for, and you realize how deeply that shit was just permeating everything within our societies at every freaking layer, all the way down to our education systems being filled with these LGBTQ people who are then poisoning the developing minds of our children. That's how bad it is for the tranny stuff. Like that's how bad it is. That's where the seeds of a lot of this stuff come from. A lot of that stuff anyway. But I digress. So, yeah, using the pretty people, the famous people, to influence the minds of the lesser aware. So, cognitive closure phrases. This is something that's going to generally be done by more authoritarian types of people, but you'll also get it with your influential type people. When those of us that don't know are looking towards these people that we think or believe know, and then they use certain types of cognitive closure phrases from this context of being an authority or authority figure or someone in the know. Now, sometimes some of these cognitive closure phrases, they have merit in human life. What I'm suggesting and the way I'm presenting this is the way these things are used by the manipulators to manipulate those who are less aware than they are. So, cognitive closure phrases are succinct, memorable expressions that tend to end discussions or suppress further inquiry. These phrases often sound conclusive or definitive, giving the impression that no additional discussion is necessary or possible. They serve as a psychological mechanism to achieve closure in a conversation, especially when topics are complex or uncomfortable. Cognitive characteristics of cognitive closure phrases. They're definitive. These are phrases that carry a tone of finality, suggesting that the matter is settled and not open for further analysis or debate. Simplistic. Regardless of the complexity of the issue, they might be applied to. Wait a minute. Regardless of the complexity of the issues, I got an extra comma in there that I don't need. Okay. Regardless of the complexity of the issues they might be applied to, these phrases reduce the discussion to a simple, often very simplistic statement. Why do I have simplistic statement? Oh, well, I'm doing some editing while I'm doing the video. There's so much here. I've probably missed a few things. Anyway, conversation stoppers. By their nature, these phrases discourage further questioning. They're typically used to shut down debate or to avoid delving into deeper into the subject matter. Using such phrases can have significant impact on both personal and group discussions. So you'll see it with politics, you'll see it with politicians, you'll see it with quote unquote authority figures, and you'll see it with in your personal life with people who are domineering, controlling, and all types of other things. Now, you can get that from somebody who's none of those things, that knows they're arguing with an imbecile and says, look, case closed, period, paragraph, end of fucking story. Because you're just done with it. And that's just the way you're going to close it. And you're doing some of the same stuff, but you're not doing it from these places of an attempt to manipulate, cut somebody off that's rational, logical, and actually trying to make headway in a disagreement or an argument or something like that. So, as you look at this a little deeper, using such phrases can have significant impact on both personal and group discussion. So, hindering or even preventing the exploration of ideas, stifling innovation where they don't want you to think beyond where they say no. You can't develop something to be better. And it stops critical thinking relevant to that shit. It's absolutely a thing. They may be used as a tool to avoid uncomfortable conversations. Narcissists do this, your control freaks, accountability too, to evade accountability. Your control freaks, your authoritarians that want to play the my Johnson's bigger than your Johnson my say is final, boy. That kind of stuff. And these people, rather than being transparent, they play the authority card. If they were not hiding anything, they wouldn't have to play the authority card in the ways that I'm referring to, because in all of the contexts I'm referring to this, it's for manipulative, controlling, subtle manipulation type tactics, and none of it good. So over-reliance on these phrases can lead to a lack of depth in understanding of complex issues. For instance, you don't know the family dynamic truly because every time you touch something, dad's like, case closed, case closed. So you literally don't know anything beyond it. There's other ways in which that can unfold as well. So lack of depth in understanding complex issues, as they discourage the discussion that is often necessary to fully grasp the topic. So cognitive closure phrases at a surface level, that kind of gives you a sense. But if you want to go through and dive through this and read some of these examples, you can kind of get a better sense of how and where these people do this and how it manifests. Here's some of these statements, but there's more. You just got to recognize it as when somebody's just shutting you down. End of story. Shut you down. That kind of stuff. People use all kinds of colorful phrasing that fits the type of category of a cognitive closure phrase. Beyond that, you guys can read and see what you can come up with. So cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is an incredibly powerful tool for influencing thoughts and behavior because it taps into the basic psychological drive. It taps into a basic psychological drive. And see, since we don't understand it, it allows them to tap into it. The desire for consistency. Advertisers, politicians, media outlets, and social influencers use this strategy to manipulate perceptions, drive consumer behavior, and sway opinions. By creating or amplifying dissonance, they then provide a means to resolve it. And I can assure you, cognitive dissonance can be a very uncomfortable thing to experience. There's a handful of ways it can unfold. All of it is psychological mind coitus, if you will. None of it pleasant. Providing the means to resolve it, these groups can nudge people towards specific decisions, beliefs, or actions. So I'm going to read that statement again. By creating or amplifying dissonance, they can provide a means to resolve it. These groups can nudge people towards specific decisions, beliefs, or actions. So there's somebody who's trying to influence all of these things about you that I've been telling, using things like this. Cognitive dissonance refers to a psychological discomfort or tension that arises when a person holds two conflicting beliefs, attitudes, or behaviors simultaneously. To resolve this discomfort, people are motivated to change one of the conflicting elements in order to reduce the inconsistency and restore a sense of mental harmony. This strategy is widely used by advertisers, politicians, media outlets, and others who seek to influence human behavior or decision making. This is an incredibly powerful tool because it taps into, this is incredibly powerful because it taps into the basic human desire for internal consistency. People generally prefer to have their beliefs, attitudes, and behaviors align in a way that doesn't create tension. When those elements don't align, they experience discomfort, which can be strategically exploited. Understanding how cognitive dissonance works can help people to recognize when they are being subtly manipulated and make more informed choices about their beliefs, actions, and their purchases. Cognitive dissonance can happen in a handful of different ways, but when you realize they can actually do this to you in a mind coitusing trickery thing with advertising and marketing and all the ways that goes on, politics, social movements, media, social influence, peer pressure, psychological manipulation, and behavior control. I mean, look at this. This is all what it's for. It's all to manipulate and influence you. Now, confirmation bias, this one's something you can see people doing all the time. Confirmation bias is the tendency for people to search for, interpret, favor, and recall information in a way that confirms their pre-existing beliefs or opinions. This cognitive bias leads people to give more weight to evidence that supports what they already believe and to dismiss or ignore information that contradicts their views. Confirmation bias is not just limited to beliefs, but can influence decisions, opinions, and the way we perceive the world around us. Confirmation bias is a powerful tool and pervasive psychological phenomenon that shapes how people process information, form opinions, and make decisions. It reinforces existing beliefs, which can make it challenging for people to objectively evaluate new information. I've talked about people being stuck behind the barrier of their beliefs. Good luck getting through that, mere mortal. In various contexts, whether politics, media, consumer behavior, or science, confirmation bias plays a critical role in shaping opinions and decisions. And you can just, the older you get, the more experience you get, the more you watch people and you watch how things play out, you can see that people will do this. People do this a lot. People want their beliefs to be true, and they're going to look by default for information, generally by default, that confirms what they believe to be true, rather than seeking all of the information to know and understand and not have a belief that they're stuck by. It's crazy, because confirmation bias can happen because you have a belief that you want to hang on to. You don't possess knowledge. If you had knowledge, there's no need for confirmation bias, because you know the thing, you understand the ins and outs, the ups and downs, the lefts, the rights, and the all arounds. There's no bias. You just know. When you have a belief because you don't know, and there could be a couple of different scenarios, you'll hang on to one thing in lieu of other information that could possibly show you something completely different. By recognizing and understanding confirmation bias, people can become more aware of how it influences their thinking and be better equipped to evaluate information in a more balanced and objective way. You have to have the knowledge as well, which is why we should all be motivated to educate ourselves out of the ignorance that we're all born into. Ignorance is the Achilles heel of the human species. Our ignorance is the very thing that everybody that's running this world is taking advantage of to have us in the condition that we're in now. Period. Paragraph. End of story. Just, cognitive closure. But seriously, that's kind of one of those things where that's objectively true. It's objectively true. And you don't want to argue with me about it, because you can't prove me wrong. It's objectively true. And I use a cognitive closure phrase for that, just to joke around. Anyway, so this bias, the confirmation bias, can occur in many contexts, from political and social issues to consumer behavior and health-related decisions. It can skew judgment, reinforce stereotypes, and make it difficult for people to objectively assess information, which often results in polarized views and entrenched positions. Those people that are hanging on to those beliefs with the white knuckle death grip. And when you can't penetrate the barrier of beliefs, the barrier of ignorance, ignorance will defend itself. It doesn't know that it doesn't know, but it can be a barrier to get through. The barrier of beliefs, the barrier of ignorance, pride, ego, skepticism, cynicism. Good luck, mere mortal. Unless somebody's actually wanting to educate themselves or be educated by others, they're not going to put in the time that it takes to consume the knowledge that gives them the foundation upon which to stand, that gives them the eyes to see, to recognize, for instance, things like this, because they took the time to learn and educate themselves. Again, further down on the page, there's, this one's almost 1,500 words, but there's more examples of how confirmation bias plays itself out in various contexts, various scenarios, that should you want to better understand what confirmation bias looks like in these various things, it would probably benefit you to go through this and read it yourself using the link of the website that is available in the description. Anyway, confirmation bias. Okay, controlled information. We've seen an awful lot of that in the last 5 years now, haven't we? By controlling the information that people receive, it's possible to shape their perceptions and knowledge. Whoa. Oh, my mouse moved. Okay. Controlled information. Yeah, my mouse moved. Sorry. I think I knocked it when I was talking. So by controlling information that people receive, it's possible to shape their perceptions and knowledge. This can involve censorship or the deliberate spreading of misinformation, and that shit is everywhere. Controlled information refers to the strategic management, manipulation, or censorship of information to shape public perception, behavior, and opinion. And dare I go back to this? How dare they? Yes, they are intelligent, but they're acknowledging, oh, it's crazy. This should be like a blueprint to understand. Just this one page. You really don't have to truly get it. I never had to go beyond like the first 2 pages of this book. And when you understand what they're telling you in the first 3 paragraphs, this isn't even a paragraph. This is a friggin' sentence. So 2 paragraphs and a sentence. I mean, I guess you could say a little bit more, but oh my God, look at what the hell is saying. Implying invisible governors, that we're unaware of them. They're part of an inner circle. The whole look at it. Look at what they're telling you in just the first couple of paragraphs. It's just crazy. It's crazy. So this is why it's important to understand all of this stuff. This is why it's important for you to be motivated to come here and read through this stuff. Oh, what was that? Yeah, the Holodomor. Cultural control, revisionism, manipulating the information, controlled information. Anyway, it gets deep. I can't justify reading all of this stuff to you. I can't. So there it is at a high level. Controlled information. We've seen a myriad of examples of it over the last 5 years. And if you need more or would like more insight to it, it's going to be there in that little thought section of controlled information. So, cultural symbols and ideology. Advertisers and politicians skillfully utilize cultural symbols, values, and idea. And some of the stuff we've seen is so cringeworthy the way they're doing it. When you hear Hillary Clinton trying to speak like a black person, when you hear these people doing certain, it's just like, what the hell? Anyway, advertisers and politicians skillfully utilize cultural symbols, values, ideologies to craft messages that resonate deeply with their audiences, and they'll adjust it depending on their target demographic or audience. This strategy is effective because it taps into the collective conscious of a society, leveraging shared narratives and ideals to foster a connection and then grow it over time, like you would foster a child and grow and cultivate it over time. In both political and commercial contexts, the strategic use of cultural symbols can greatly enhance the effectiveness of a message. So they're using things to give you a familiarity, a sense of belonging, a sense of you're connected to that. You should be, because you recognize that symbol, or this symbol represents something that you know, believe in, trust, things of that nature. By aligning a product or a candidate, or even an idea, with widely recognized or cherished values and symbols, both advertisers and politicians, and other people as well, can more effectively engage with their audiences, fostering a sense, cultivating, building slowly over time, but also quickly through repeat, a sense of shared identity and common purpose. Look at how Antifa did that. BLM done that. The left has done that. We all have a purpose. Let's scream and yell. College students seem to do that. Just all this stuff. This approach not only helps in capturing attention, but in building lasting loyalty and support. This one's important because it's one of the more subtle things that you would never realize, that they actually go that low to make it feel the idea, the ideology, the narrative that they want you to many times bandwagon with. They'll use things like cultural symbols, or cultural ideologies and kind of tie it together and create these seemingly grassroots movements that aren't so grassroots when you actually understand who these people are. Just take a look at the left. Just take a look at USAID to the degree that you understand what they've been doing with that money, who these people represent, what they've been doing, how low they will stoop, the underhanded, insidious, diabolical shit you'd never expect. This was all happening by people that were in the halls of our fucking government. How does that make any logical sense that people would do that? And then look at what they were doing to the minds of the people during, for instance, the Biden administration. Think about it. Look what they were doing during the Trump administration, from the point in which the lockdowns happened until the point in which he handed over the reins of control to FEMA as he basically exited office, but didn't exit office in, what was it, 2020, before Biden got in. And strangely enough, he handed the reins of power over to FEMA, had a big ceremony about it. I got the video up on my old channel. I'm pretty sure it's over there. And people just haven't figured out. And then today, FEMA is like this ridiculously corrupt, clearly corrupt thing. People just don't ask enough questions. There's just too much rattling around in my head. I'm surprised I don't have headaches all the time. But anyway, clearly I've digressed. So political candidates often use cultural symbols and ideologies as a strategy, often strategically employ national symbols such as flags and eagles and patriotic slogans in their campaigns. Rah, 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 this, that, or the other. These symbols serve a dual purpose. Firstly, to invoke a strong sense of national identity and unity, patriotism and all that stuff, making you be a proud American. Because, yeah, anyway, making them powerful tools for rallying support. I mean, just look at political rallies. It's just everybody's all starry-eyed and on the bandwagon of our man. He's our man. Yeah. Secondly, cultural symbols and ideologies help to frame the candidate as a protector or promoter of national values, aligning themselves with the aspirations and the pride of the electorate. I mean, it really gets underhanded because when you look at who politicians are, number one, they're only human. Number two, most of them are psychopathic because they're gravitating towards the positions of power that these things that we know about, these types of psychological profiles that inherently do this. And somehow we're allowing these people to gain positions of power. We're voting for them, and then they're manipulating our minds through all of these mechanisms of influence using all of these strategies. It's just like, are you kidding me? This is truly the quote-unquote devil's world. There's just no two fucking ways about it. But again, I digress. So, emotional appeal. See, I've been telling people for a while, mind, emotion, psychology, sexuality, spirituality, human will, things of that nature. Well, here's emotion. Emotion is a non-physical thing. They make you feel it. You will feel it, but you can't touch it. And unless you're at a level of understanding where you can be in control of what's going into your mind and the circumstances and this, that, and the other, the emotional stuff, they can pull those strings. So human decision-making is often driven more by emotion than logic. Sales, things of that nature. I listened to a Tony Robbins sales thing about 20 years ago, and a lot of what they were talking about was how to find that emotional reason to buy. I think it was called urban, lurban, and drab. Emotional reasons to buy, logical reasons to buy, and drab. I forget what drab was. Something reasons to buy now. I forget. But what I'm getting at is, in the process of trying to sell something to somebody, they would look for where you might find, or where they could find, or where you would reveal an emotional response to something, and then they could play on it and get you to make an emotionally driven purchase. And then you'll eventually have buyer's remorse because you're emotionally driven, the whole nine yards, and they're not responsible. But that's kind of the way it works. So these appeals attempt to invoke strong emotional responses like fear, joy, empathy, anger, or pride. to influence behavior, opinions, or decisions. Advertisers and politicians, I mean, look at this as consistent. The people that use these underhanded, malignant, fucking subtle tactics to mind coitus you, advertisers and politicians. Frequently tap into emotions like fear, joy, anger, empathy to drive action. Appealing to emotions rather than reason can effectively manipulate opinions and beliefs. Emotions can cloud judgment, leading to skewed perceptions. Advertisements for charitable causes might show sad images of children in need, triggering empathy. Political ads might use fear, for example, portraying an opponent as a threat to national security or personal safety to sway voters. This is the stuff they do to the people who don't have any knowledge, and they're in fear in the problem, reaction, solution environment that we're experiencing, where they're creating the problems. People don't have the knowledge. They look to the authority. They look to the government. They look to this because they're the ones that are supposed to be protecting us from the threat. So the political ads or the propaganda uses fear and does that stuff to sway your mind, your decisions, or to get you on board, again, bandwagon, or to sway voters. Charities use emotional appeal in their campaigns to elicit sympathy, to encourage donations. So, and then below, oh, hang on. I'm doing a little editing as I do this too. Anyway, here's the various ways in which you can see, and there's examples that I put together for you. Go on to emotional, or from emotional fear mongering. Another one that's tied to emotional appeal. Obviously, fear is an emotion. So fear mongering refers to the deliberate use of fear to manipulate people's emotions. I mean, a perfect example, if you remember seeing the video of the girl who was I don't know, she was the Saudi prince's daughter or something, the one that said that the babies were in the incubators, or no, she was the Iraqi, I forget who she was. But this girl was 15 at the time. She was put up to completely talking about the babies in the incubators were being thrown on the ground, fear mongering, tugging on the emotional strings. There's so many obvious displays of this stuff. So I'll start from the beginning again. Fear mongering refers to the deliberate use of fear to manipulate people's emotions, often for political, social, or economic gain. It involves spreading exaggerated or misleading information, or emphasizing threats and dangers in order to create panic, anxiety, or a sense of urgency. The goal is typically to provoke a reaction, such as support for specific policies, behaviors, or products, by amplifying a perceived threat. Fear-mongering relies on the human tendency to be more responsive to negative or fearful stimuli than to neutral or positive ones. And it often exploits people's anxieties and uncertainties. Creating and exaggerating threats can lead to fear, which is a powerful motivator. Fear can override, and generally does, override rational thinking, especially if the degree of fear heightens, leading to manipulated perceptions, and beliefs are kind of, I don't know what you're going to do when you're riddled with fear. You're going to resort to your core beliefs, and if you don't know, you don't know. So again, fear-mongering, emotional manipulation, emotional appeal, there's just so many different things that they're doing to coitus your mind. So again, because it's 1,300 words, it's just the time. You could take the time to go and look at it. I mean, you can recognize fear-mongering in politics. The media is doing it largely for the politicians, but there's other reasons why they do it. They do it to manipulate you to buy stuff, to get you to fear things, and advertising and marketing. Social media pushes fear. There's a big thing I've been telling people of the 4 absolutes of human experience and human existence: pain, suffering, death, and learning. One of the biggest things they can use to keep people under control to a degree is their fear of death. It's kind of a big deal. So, moving on, framing. Framing is the way information is presented to influence perception. It involves highlighting certain aspects of an issue while downplaying others. The way information is presented, framed, can significantly affect decisions and opinions. Framing can highlight. Now, again, framing is done for those of us that are lacking in knowledge and information. We call that ignorant. When we're ignorant and we don't know, and then these people have an agenda, they frame it in a very specific way to influence what you think, perceive, and potentially your decisions or opinions about a certain thing. Again, remember, opinions, being the lowest form of human intelligence, they're working to frame things in such a way to affect you at the opinion level, hoping that it will affect your decisions or your thinking in some way that they're trying to manipulate. Framing can highlight certain aspects while downplaying others. Framing refers to how information is presented in a way that influences how people interpret or understand it. The framing effect occurs when the way a topic, event, or issue is worded or presented shapes the viewer's perception and attitudes towards it, often by highlighting certain aspects while downplaying others. It can be a subtle yet powerful tool for persuasion, shaping public opinion, influencing decisions, and guiding behavior. Presenting economic data in a way that emphasizes growth or decline, depending on the desired public perception, is a perfect example of that. News outlets or politicians can frame policy as either job creating or job killing regulation, depending on the words, the phrasing, and the framing. Depending on the desired outcome that they have, will determine what they do, how they do it, how they present it to you, even if both frames represent the same policy. And then if you go down, you can see framing for media, politics, corporations, social movements. They got to get people on board. They got to get their advocates out there doing their activism. So it's got to be framed in a way that touches on an emotion, touches on a pain point in some way, and then emotionally charges them relevant to that. And then there you go. It's really easy to influence and to mind coitus the human being who is ignorant, lacks knowledge, lacks understanding, is naive, and is without knowledge. That is a shame, because it's a level of vulnerability that we deal with because of the nature of the reality that we were put in, blank and programmable. That's kind of a big deal, but you can't get most people to really sit and think about that stuff because they want to believe that God is good and all this other stuff. So anyway, again, I've digressed. So, illusory truth effect. The illusory truth effect refers to the psychological phenomenon in which repeated exposure to a statement or a claim increases the likelihood of it being perceived as true. Repeat, 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 regardless if it's actually of its actual accuracy. So, repetition can be part of pushing forth the illusory truth effect. And repetition is coming up here. And I've got video, maybe I'll pause this and find it, where Bush Jr. is saying sometimes you just got to catapult the propaganda and just keep repeating it until it sinks in. I think you got Eric Holder talking about gun control 20 years ago, explaining the same thing. You just got to keep repeating the propaganda regarding gun violence, and you'll get people, they understand how we operate and use that against us to get what they want and fuck the will of the people, because they see themselves as in positions of power and control, and you're just a little peasant class. Isn't that crazy? This is why they do these things. They take the liberties of learning about this stuff and then doing it to you, because they know most of you will never recognize it. So, I forget where I was. Eventually, people will hear or read the same information multiple times. They tend to believe it to be more simply because of the familiarity, even if it's false or misleading. This effect plays a significant role in shaping public opinion, influencing behavior, especially in the context of media, advertising, politics, and social media. The illusory truth effect is a cognitive bias that exploits the human brain's tendency to favor familiarity over accuracy. Now, that's an interesting little thing there. To favor the brain's tendency to favor familiarity over accuracy. That's maybe why they call humans sheep in the Bible, because rather than learn, they'd rather go with what's familiar, the herd, that kind of stuff. It's weird how that can overlay. It is related to the mere exposure effect, which suggests that people tend to develop a positive attitude towards things they are frequently exposed to. That's why they've been hypersexualizing people and putting that in front of us since the 60s, or probably even before, because they want us to develop a positive attitude towards porn, or a neutral attitude where we're not finding it abhorrent and morally abhorrent and all those other things. So slowly over time, with the exposure effect to porn, to sexuality, hypersexualization, little children and toddlers and tiaras contest. Gee, you really got to wonder about the level of consciousness, the moral fucking makeup of a woman who would put her child in a toddlers and tiaras contest. Seriously. So there shows the level of exposure of hypersexualization in that mother's mind that made it so that she would put her child in a toddlers and tiaras contest when she was 4 or 5 years old. Wow. It's an example of hyper or exposure effect relevant to sexuality, aka the hypersexualization that we're seeing. And then the ridiculous behaviors that come out of the ignorant, unknowledgeable, unaware, unconscious humans that then do things with the information that they got or were exposed to through the exposure effect, which causes this. A lot of this stuff plays off of each other and intermingles, or it's intertwined. There's a lot of interplay. So where was I at? This effect plays a significant role in shaping public opinion, influencing behavior, especially in the context of media, advertising, politics, social media. The illusory truth effect is a cognitive... Oh, okay. Sorry. It's related to mere exposure effect, which suggests that people tend to develop a positive attitude towards things they are frequently exposed to. The illusory truth effect, however, is particularly concerning because it can lead to a widespread acceptance of misinformation or false narratives over time, often without people realizing it. This is them taking advantage of our lack of knowledge, and they're influencing what we believe and taking advantage of what we believe. This effect demonstrates how repetition can distort our perception of reality. By repeatedly exposing people to a claim or an idea, whether true or false, it becomes easier for, look at how the Jews have done this with the Holocaust and the poor persecuted Jews and this, that, and the other shit. By repeatedly exposing people to a claim or an idea, whether it's true or false, Jews in this perfect example, it becomes easier for people to accept it as fact, when in fact there was never a Holocaust, 6 million Jews didn't die, the ovens didn't exist, everything they fucking said was a fabricated lie, it was fucking Russians came in after the fucking fact and installed things to make certain things look in certain ways, and they've just been repeating people, exposing them to, and since the Jews control all the media and they can control all the narratives and influence our education and all this other shit, it's a perfect fucking example for those who do not know. By repeatedly exposing people to a claim or an idea, and when none of us were alive back then, that's all it is a claim. It's an idea. We didn't experience it. We don't have any direct knowledge or gnosis. And since they've manipulated the history about it, and then they keep repeating this shit, this is how they've indoctrinated people to believe what they do, as it says, whether false or true. It becomes easier for people to accept it as fact and then have emotionally driven behaviors or reactions to people who speak against it or whatever. This effect is a powerful tool because in advertising, politics, media, and even education, to shape attitudes and to influence behavior. Understanding this cognitive bias helps people to recognize when they might be influenced by familiar but misleading information that encourages more critical thinking in evaluating repeated claims. And 1,300 words, that kind of gives you various types of examples. It's by no means exhaustive or complete, but it'll certainly give you more of a sense than you may currently have. Okay, you know what? I've gone halfway through. I'm an hour and looks like 15 minutes or so into this. I haven't eaten anything today, and it is almost 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I don't have any food in the fridge. I gotta go to the store. So I'm going to pause this, and we'll call this part 2. And after I get done eating and come back, I will create part 3, where we go through the rest of this stuff. Anyway, take care, everyone.